The CDR Consumer Experience Guidelines, or CX Guidelines, help organizations provide CDR consumers with intuitive, informed, and trustworthy data sharing experiences. The CX Guidelines demonstrate optional ways to implement various CDR requirements and recommendations. See the How to Use These Guidelines page for help with using the CX Guidelines. The CX Guidelines discuss the consent model and consent flow. Guideline pages cover specific steps and variations for a range of scenarios in the consent model. These pages contain wireframes, guidelines, prototypes, and open source assets related to the steps. The CX Guidelines are distinct from the CX Standards and the Consumer Data Standards in general. The CDS Consumer Experience Standards are binding requirements. They define data language standards to ensure participants use consistent terminology when referring to CDR data in consumer-facing interactions. They define accessibility standards, consent standards, authentication and authorization standards, and other standards associated with the CDR consumer experience in the consent model. An implementation is non-compliant if it fails to conform to the consumer experience standards. The CX Guidelines are not binding. While the rules require CDR participants to have regard to the CX Guidelines, an implementation that does not conform to the CX Guidelines may still be compliant. CX Guidelines are intended to aid participants in their implementations and assist consumers by providing a consistent and trustworthy experience. You can participate in the development of the CX Guidelines. To suggest a change to the Consumer Experience Guidelines, create a CX Guidelines change request. You can request a change to an existing guideline or an addition to the guidelines. Create CX Guidelines requests as issues in the Consumer Data Standards Maintenance GitHub repository. Select the Issues tab and then choose New Issue. Choose Get Started in the CX Guidelines Request panel to begin creating the issue. GitHub opens the CX Guidelines Request template. The issue template includes the labels Change Request, Consumer Experience, and CX Guideline. The issue template has headings for the essential items, description, area affected, and change proposed. There are brief instructions for how items should be filled in. Note the disclaimer marked Do Not Delete at the end of the template description. This disclaimer must appear on all CX Guidelines change requests. In summary, it says, CX Guidelines are not standards and are not binding. CX Guidelines are not intended to be comprehensive. Certain areas are out of scope. CX Guidelines are not part of the Consumer Data Standards maintenance cycle. When you are satisfied with the change request, choose Submit New Issue. CX Guidelines change requests are handled by CX subject matter experts, or SMEs, in collaboration with other CDR agencies on a case-by-case basis. See CDS Guide, Creating a CX Guidelines Change Request. Thank you for participating in developing the CDR Consumer Experience Guidelines.